Something in Michio Kaku's expression betrayed the gravity of what he was about to share. This wasn't the enthusiastic physicist audiences had come to know, the man who could turn the complexities of string theory into poetic explanations. No, this time his voice faltered. His hands lingered on the edge of the podium. And his eyes, filled with an almost unbearable weight, kept drifting back to an image projected behind him. A cross-section of the moon, glowing with strange patterns. The room, packed with scientists, journalists, and historians, waited for him to speak. What was meant to be a presentation about recent lunar satellite findings turned into something no one expected, a disclosure that shattered assumptions built over centuries. For decades, the moon has been a quiet companion, a lifeless rock circling Earth, stabilizing our tides, and inspiring myths. But the latest generation of deep space quantum imaging satellites told a different story. Instead of finding a solid interior, researchers detected enormous cavities beneath the lunar crust, vast chambers stretching for miles, perfectly symmetrical, aligned with eerie precision. These weren't lava tubes or natural fissures. They were geometric, engineered, structured. Heat signatures pulsed inside them, consistent and focused, nothing like random volcanic activity. Whatever was hidden beneath the surface wasn't only artificial, it appeared to be active. The implications spread through the audience like a cold wave. If these readings were correct, then the moon wasn't simply a passive body formed by chance collisions billions of years ago. It was designed, constructed, perhaps even maintained. Then came the patterns. For years, scientists have recorded minor gravitational anomalies on the moon, slight deviations in its pull, often dismissed as instrument errors. But when these anomalies were mapped in unprecedented detail, they formed a global lattice, an invisible web stretching pole to pole. This lattice wasn't random. It mirrored the positions of the hollow chambers beneath the surface and aligned with reflective regions detected by radar. It looked less like a natural body and more like a mechanism, an intricate design regulating the moon's position in orbit. That suggestion alone was terrifying. If the lattice still functioned, if the moon was not just a satellite but a stabilizing regulator, then Earth itself might owe its climate, its tides, even the stability of its axis to an ancient design. Without the moon, Earth could be a chaotic, unstable planet, unsuitable for life as we know it. The silence in the room deepened as Kaku shifted from data to ancient memory. He drew connections between the science and the myths that had circulated for thousands of years. Ancient Sumerians, Egyptians, and Mayans all spoke of a time before the moon appeared in the sky, describing it as an arrival, a newcomer, sometimes even a gift from the gods. Stories of divine beings descending from it, or teaching humanity after its appearance, were dismissed as myth for centuries. But when laid beside the data, the lattice, the chambers, the metallic structures, these myths began to sound less like legend and more like fragments of a forgotten truth. Even eclipses, those breathtaking moments when the moon perfectly covers the sun, raised unsettling questions. The odds of a celestial body being precisely the right size and distance to block the sun so neatly are astronomically small. Was this precision simply luck, or deliberate calibration? The possibility that our most awe-inspiring sky event might have been engineered left the audience visibly shaken. Suddenly, old mysteries took on chilling clarity. Seismic readings from Apollo missions, once dismissed as anomalies, were revisited. During Apollo 12, NASA intentionally crashed part of the lunar module onto the surface. The result stunned engineers. The moon reverberated like a bell, ringing for nearly an hour. At the time, explanations ranged from unusual rock composition to quirky seismic behavior. But with today's new data, that resonance felt different. Natural stone doesn't ring like that, unless it's hollow or reinforced. Michio Kaku paused at this point, his voice breaking slightly. He explained how new AI-driven geological simulations revisited those Apollo results, comparing them against every known model of planetary geology. The conclusion was unavoidable. The Moon's seismic response made sense only if its internal structure was hollow, or deliberately engineered to appear that way. The so-called moonquakes, those faint echoes recorded for decades, might not be geological at all. They could be signals, reverberations of an ancient mechanism, perhaps even a dormant system waiting for activation. The thought that the Moon might not be a natural body at all, but an artifact, constructed, placed, and still functioning, was more than unsettling. It implied intention. It implied intelligence. And it suggested that for all of human history, we may have been living under the silent watch of something far older, and far more advanced than ourselves. By the end of the presentation, the once bustling auditorium sat in a silence so heavy it was almost unbearable. Journalists didn't raise their hands. Scientists didn't rush to challenge the findings. For once, everyone seemed united not in skepticism, but in awe, in fear, in realization. Michio Kaku finally stepped back from the podium, his voice trembling. He didn't give conclusions. He didn't claim to know who, or what, was responsible. He simply let the data speak, and the myths whisper their warnings. The Moon, our timeless companion, was no longer a mystery of nature. It was something else, and, for centuries, humanity has gazed at the Moon with wonder. We've written poems to it, mapped it, landed on it, and treated it as nothing more than Earth's faithful companion. But in a recent presentation, Michio Kaku, the physicist known for unraveling the universe's secrets with a smile, looked anything but comfortable. His voice cracked. His eyes lingered too long on one haunting image. And what followed sent ripples of unease through the scientific world. He began with the seismic data, the echoes first recorded during the Apollo missions. When NASA deliberately crashed spacecraft into the lunar surface to measure vibrations, the Moon didn't behave like solid rock. It reverberated. It rang, like a struck bell, for nearly an hour. At first, this was brushed off as an oddity, perhaps caused by unique geology. But the effect was repeated across multiple missions. Different impacts, same eerie resonance. Decades later, with modern analysis, the conclusion is unavoidable. Either the Moon is radically unlike any natural body we've studied, or it isn't a natural body at all. And then Kaku asked the question no one wanted to voice. If the Moon behaves like an instrument, who tuned it? And why? The revelations didn't end there. Astronomers have quietly documented strange emissions coming from the dark side of the Moon. Bursts of low-frequency radio signals, repeating at consistent intervals in localized regions. At first they were dismissed as interference or equipment glitches. But advanced algorithms have revealed patterns buried within the noise, pulses that resemble coded signals, like early computer language. Stranger still, these emissions seem to spike whenever deep space probes pass behind the Moon, as if something there is reacting to our presence. Could this be an ancient beacon? A surveillance system long forgotten? Or something else entirely? Kaku didn't answer. He didn't have to. The implications were clear, and the silence in the auditorium told the story. This wasn't just science fiction anymore. Then came the orbit. The Moon's path around Earth has long been a puzzle. Its size and distance are so precise that it can perfectly block out the Sun during an eclipse, a phenomenon unique in our solar system. And while most moons wobble or drift in subtle ways over time, ours doesn't. It maintains a steady orbit, almost unnaturally stable, as though carefully calibrated. Even its rotation is perfectly locked, ensuring that the same face always points toward Earth. Textbooks call this a result of tidal forces. But when Kaku revealed the mathematical probabilities, The odds of such perfect synchronization seemed impossibly small. It's as if the moon isn't just orbiting, it's performing. Performing for us. The unease in the room deepened when Kaku raised a different issue. What had been lost? Entire sections of Apollo mission data, including high-frequency astronaut transmissions, are missing. Some tapes were recorded over. Others simply vanished. Whistleblowers, now in their later years, have begun speaking out, claiming astronauts described unexplained lights on the horizon, metallic sounds beneath their feet, and sudden bursts of interference when crossing the far side. They also hint at private debriefings where astronauts were instructed never to speak of certain experiences again. Kaku, usually cautious with anything resembling conspiracy, admitted the silence was too deliberate to ignore. If there's nothing unusual about the moon, why erase the records? Why bury the evidence? The presentation wasn't just about data, it was about perspective. Myths from Sumeria, Mesoamerica, and ancient Egypt all describe a time before the moon, when the skies were different. They describe the moon not as eternal, but as something that arrived, something placed. These were once thought to be metaphor, stories of gods and creation. But against the backdrop of seismic echoes, coded emissions, and orbital perfection, the myths began to sound eerily like memory, humanity's fragmented recollection of something it wasn't meant to forget. By the time Kaku finished, the atmosphere in the auditorium had shifted completely. This wasn't the silence of academic awe. It was something heavier, the realization that everything we believed about the moon could be wrong. Perhaps it isn't just a satellite. Perhaps it isn't lifeless. And perhaps it isn't even ours. From its hollow responses to impact, to its impossible orbit, from strange radio emissions to erased NASA tapes, the evidence now points in one unsettling direction. The moon may not be a natural formation. It may be a construct, placed with intent, maintained with purpose, and, most disturbing of all, still functioning. Kaku's final words trailed off, his voice unsteady. He didn't claim to know who or what placed it there. He didn't pretend to have the answers. He only acknowledged the undeniable patterns. And when a man of science who built his career on logic and reason holds back tears while describing our nearest neighbor, you know the truth he carries is almost too heavy to bear. The moon, our symbol of love and serenity, may instead be something else. An ancient mechanism, a watchful sentinel, or a machine that still hums quietly beneath its dusty surface. If that's true, the questions become unavoidable. Who built it? Why was it placed here? And what happens if we dig too deep? Perhaps, just perhaps, the moon has been listening all along.